Welcome to the Hawkeye Sidekick podcast. And you're very welcome back to the Hawkeye Sidekick hurling podcast with your host Mark Kennedy. Joined again this week by Kieran Collins, and welcome back, Ruairi. How are things?
Very good, Mark.
Great, Mark. Thanks.
I suppose this week, guys, we'll have a look at the epic weekend that was last weekend in Munster and Senior Hurling Championship Round 3. We'll look at Round 4 this weekend. And also Joe McDonagh is back Round 4 this weekend. Some great fixtures lined up. I suppose, guys, we can't start anywhere without going to Super Value Pairc Ui Chaoimh last Saturday night. What an epic tussle between Cork and Limerick. I suppose, Kieran, just a magnificent game, really, from start to finish.
It really was. It'll go down as one of the games for the ages, really. I suppose that had everything. High scoring, controversy, just real attacking hurling. The weather played ball. I suppose there was no negative in the game. And I suppose for Cork, the huge positive was they brought it. They brought it to Limerick in spades. The intensity, the work rate. They bullied them, basically bullied them in that first half. The puck outs, it was their main platform. They got great rewards from their long puck outs. They got there in huge numbers, winning the breaking ball. They scored 2-5 off their own long puck out in the first half, which is an incredible stat. Just really, in Limerick's face, just the speed, they played, and there isn't many teams who could have lived with that Cork performance in the first half, last week. I suppose if you're going to be hard to be negative on them, but the big question mark is, while it's very good scoring 328, conceding 326 is another day's work. And in hindsight, and looking back at it, they were 9 points up in that game, and the turnaround to be 4 down, coming into the 65, 70 minute mark, which is probably similar to the Clare game where they went 7 points up early in the second half, and Clare fairly quickly brought that lead back down and turned it over again. So while it was a very complete performance in the forwards, there's still question marks. There's still kinks in that back in the back unit and defensively. If they iron that out, and if they can iron that out, they're a real force to be reckoned with based on that performance. I suppose their main thing for them going into this weekend is, to back it up. To back up the performance, come with it again on Sunday to Tipperary. I suppose everything was the home game, and to be fair to the Cork crowd, they probably will slag and joke with about them, but they really, for teams, you compare it to Tipperary over the last couple of years where, Tipperary, I suppose, it hasn't been all rosy for them, and the crowds have just abandoned them, really, in huge numbers. But to be fair to Cork, the amount of Cork fans in that stadium, and the noise they made for a team that are struggling, like the team could have been out on the night, but I think that was that really helped on the team as well. But a really good performance. There is negatives, but it kept them in the fight. They live to fight another day. The win, while they might get it on Sunday, still doesn't guarantee safe passage, but it's out of their hands after that, and they can do no more.
Yeah, absolutely, Kieran. Well said. Rory, get you in there. I suppose get your thoughts on that epic encounter in Cork on Saturday evening.
Oh yeah, thrilling game. I was below with the primary game, and we're kind of right down at pitch level where we were seated, and just a blur of excitement, as the game went so quickly. The goal chances both ends, 6 goals again, and Cork really are the Kevin Keegan Newcastle of the championship. It's pure entertainment because, as Kieran said, their forward line are so dangerous at one end, and their back line at times, their defending, always gives teams chances. The only thing I'd say, the difference, I suppose, between the Clare game and this game was against Clare, as Kieran said, quickly gave up that lead. That 7-point lead was gone in 5 minutes. I just kind of thought here, they tapped on a point or two. Jordan Limerick's good spell kind of kept them thereabouts, and when they went to 3, they never really got further than 3 points behind, which kind of kept them in it. And maybe in one sense, Limerick took the lead, maybe with 10, 12 minutes to go, and Cork had time for a counterpunch, and when they got their chance at the very end, they did take it, and you just, from a Limerick point of view, you're kind of wondering why Kingston wasn't fouled earlier, I suppose you talk about cynical fouls, but it's part of the game. And the last minute, a guy saw him through. I think when he went to flip the ball over Burns' head, that's where he probably should have been, foul from there because you're given that chance just when he got inside. And again, like, he's a player from an opposition point of view, you kind of hate to see come in because his pace causes huge problems for teams. Kind of one of these guys, I suppose, when you're looking from the outside, you're kind of wondering why he doesn't get more game time. Because when he comes up against Clare and Limerick, he seems to cause problems to both of those teams in particular anyway. So, look, as we said, even the bench they have coming in, forwards-wise, very dangerous. I thought the first half, their backs actually, apart from that goal they gave away after short puck-out, I thought their backs were doing well in the first half. Sean O'Donoghue was doing as well as he could, I suppose, on Gillane, was getting out in front for a good few balls. Half-back line started solid. I thought Downey at 6 gave them a bit more kind of solidity than against Clare. Joyce was getting caught forward a good bit loose on Rogers that day. So, but second half, that kind of came apart for them. Limerick had inroads there, especially with a direct ball into full forward line second half. And again, the short puck out again that Limerick turned over. But it just made for a thrilling game. And we mentioned this, like, that the reason the Cork fans keep turning out for them, and we're talking like maybe defeat after defeat recently, and they've all been close defeats as well. But it's just the fact that the team give everything. There's always this like X factor about them with that power to have up front, like be it Harnedy or Hoggy or any of these lads can turn it on in a split second, and they have that magic about them. And with the pace of Barrett now as well, kind of complements. We spoke earlier in the league that they needed the likes of Connolly and Dalton. They're a different type of forward for Cork. A real threat in the air, and then they have pace coming on with that. Fitzgibbon as well midfield. What a game he had! Like, unbelievable match. And even though Flanagan scored 3-3. And when I look back at the goals, like at the game, I thought they were kind of simple goals and he was just finishing them. But his movement for some of the goals are exceptional. Just split-second decision. Even the one where Hegarty was cutting inside and he just instinctively pulled outside before Hegarty even had possession of the ball. He was thinking like 2 steps ahead to get himself loose, and finishing was excellent. But even when you see a guy score 3-3 and nobody complains about man of the match going to Darragh Fitzgibbon, it shows how well he played. What a game, and it just has thrown the whole thing wide open again.
Yeah, absolutely. Kieran, get you in here in terms of the Cork performance. I think, Rory, you've kind of capped it up nicely here in terms of Darragh Fitzgibbon, Seamus Hardney, Hal Horgan here with 111 as well. I mean, this was a massive game for Cork hurling for this campaign. I mean, it was backs to the wall, and you have to give them massive kudos here. The pressure that was applied to them and to a man, even with the goals going in from Seamus Flanagan here, they never really flinched. But I thought that middle third axis caused Limerick all sorts of problems for the majority of this game.
They did, and definitely in that first half, like they were winning every battle all around the field. But I think it just shows when when hunger is there. And I think we've seen it in the championship so far. Like when the need is most, that teams are putting in a performance. You can compare it to Wexford playing Galway, 2 weeks ago, and like when backs are to the wall and you're playing for, I suppose you're being questioned and you're playing for pride. And you're playing for, for your jersey. That's a huge plus, and it's a huge impetus for a team to kick forward. But like I suppose you couldn't single out any Cork player who didn't at least give a good account for himself in his battle on the day. They're all really impressive. I think definitely Darragh Fitzgibbon was immense. Like 5 points from midfield. I think the question now is Rob Downey, centre back. While I think they rant and rave about Kieran Joyce, and he is a very good player, but Joyce tends to sit a little deeper, and he's kind of prefers playing the sit and 6 role, where I think Cork went man on man the weekend about 15 and 15. Mark your man, and that's your battle for the match. And is there a question where I think Downey did very, very well in centre back. Personally, I'd like to see Joyce maybe wing back, because he's a player that likes to get forward, and wing back is a position he can do that. It'll be interesting to see if he is, back in play for the weekend. Do they change that winning team? I think on the sideline as well. I think Cork were very astute. I think to Owen Downey's expense, get whipped off in the first half. He was on a yellow. I think that was very good game management. They were thinking ahead. Obviously, the Limerick forwards are a handful, and the last thing you want is a full back being curtailed with a yellow card. I also think their time management as well, I think, was obviously a huge focus on the game. You look at near the end where Pat Ryan tells Horgan to put the free down the wing to waste time. I think Cork's puckouts, they were snappy. They didn't give Limerick a chance to reset. Like I suppose we saw the last one, it was very, very quick. And I think, Rory, your question why why Limerick weren't a little bit more cynical. I think when you're not reset for your puck out, you're on the back foot and you're chasing your tail straight away. So I think it's a big factor in that. I think if Limerick were reset, it would have been a different outcome. But it was a really quick puck out, and you're 6 and 7s at the back when you're not reset and you have a player coming down your flank. The one thing big gripe I have was, Patrick Collins, while he had probably his best game in the Cork jersey, it was the feigning injury, where you hit the ground, there was no contact at all. We don't want to see that in hurling. That's soccer antics, and there's no place in the game for me. And while I know his objective was to, wind the clock down, Nicky Quaid was, I suppose, there was a lot of talk about it last year, time wasting with the, going down for contact lens and such. But this is very similar in a kind of an unorthodox way, really. But it's just, we don't want to see this, diving in the game and failing injury. I don't think he was trying to, maybe get Kieran Carroll or something, but just I suppose the amount of time he stayed on the ground as well. Obviously, it was a tactic for Cork to Limerick were in a purple patch, and they were trying to curb that momentum. But yeah, no, to be fair, the Cork were really, really good, and I suppose the biggest, it's one game of two. They're going to have to back it up again Sunday.
Rory, in terms of Limerick here, 2-point loss. No, John Kiley was at pains to say at the end, was probably disappointed on the composure element of it being 4 points up late. But I suppose there's more opening half woes here from a Limerick performance perspective. A slow start. Cork arguably could have been more than 8 points up if Nicky Quaid hadn't been on top form with a few goal chances. There was a resurgence, particularly in that second half. Seamus Flanagan to the fore. So there was positive negatives, but I suppose a result like this will focus minds in the Limerick camp, and plus Sean Finn injury, the hamstring injury here as well, adds more depth chart questions for this Limerick full backline.
Yeah, and they're really going to have to get Mike Casey back fit soon here because, it's becoming one injury too many. And you can see the first half, Cork especially targeted that right side of the Limerick defence. It was puck after puck out down on top of Burns, who's had a very slow start to the championship this year. And same as first half, Clare really targeted him, putting Duggan over there and got a lot of joy. Strangely, didn't do it in the second half against Limerick. Cork did it right from the start and just swarming in on the break. The pace of Barrett getting onto the break of the ball as well. But Harnedy caused massive problems in puck out the first half. And then when it broke, Finn seemed to be struggling from even a small bit earlier because he just wasn't covering the ground like he used to. And I know he's come back from a serious injury. So you kind of had an axis there of Finn, Burns and Hannon who, just seemed to be, three of them seemed to be a bit off their game. Against a forward line like Cork, you can maybe give it one defender off. But like having, especially in the first half, having three guys a bit off it, and it's probably a bit worrying. Burns' form must be a bit worrying for Kiley. I know we spoke about how he's trusted some of the forwards who've been off form, and he probably got rewarded with Flanagan there. Maybe not so with Tom Morrissey, who's still struggling a small bit for form. Looks a small bit kind of heavy-legged at the minute, doesn't he? There's no zip about him at the minute. And look, I'm sure Kiley kind of knows maybe he's seen this before and is waiting for him to play his way back into form. But in the back line, that's a big thing. You have to have, your backs really need to be tuned in, especially against, a forward line as potent as Cork's. So that is a factor. Look, again, Limerick against Clare started poorly, gave away, came from 8 points behind there. Same thing again here. And they did against Galway in the Ireland semi-final last year. And Kilkenny in the final, the reason was that going behind doesn't faze them. They don't panic. They know they'll have their patch. And when they do, they do score heavily in that patch and they trust in themselves. It was just probably unusual because usually when we see Limerick come back and take the lead, they hold on to it. This was an unusual end to it. I think the fact that Cork, with 14 men in their previous game, had come right back and had a chance at the death, gave them a bit of heart. Yeah, and just with that raucous home crowd kind of with them and the momentum they kind of had, it just made for a thrilling finish. Look, if you're a fan of some of the other teams who think you have a chance to win in Ireland, the way Cork played, and the danger they showed, you kind of wondering, would it be safer to see them knocked out now? But look, you never know in the Munster Championship who'll step up next either. Yeah, look, from a Limerick point of view, there is worrying questions with the back line. As we know, forwards, they do have Adam English as well, came in as well. I just thought a bit earlier as well, they needed maybe, David Reedy as well, struggled to get into the game. I thought they were a bit slow for once in the sideline. Knock was getting involved with Pat Ryan as well over certain things about messages onto the pitch, kind of stuff you don't really see with Limerick. And I don't know, did the kind of atmosphere throw them off a small bit because right in front of them was the biggest issue. And I think it was on puck outs. They should have like set back, invited Cork into a short puck out more, because as we saw, like if any team are uncomfortable in short puck outs, it's Cork. Like they can get turned over a lot. 2 goals. I thought Limerick pushed up too much and let Cork go along where they were having joy. I thought that's something they would have adjusted to at the game, pull the lines back a bit, let them go short, and then try and swarm them as they've done successfully in the past. It's just strange to see that happen to Limerick. I hadn't seen it before, where ball after ball after ball and puck outs long, like they were just in huge trouble. But look, as we said, rectify things in the second half, got a grip in it, especially with that bit of a breeze. Puck outs were holding that bit more in the air. The halfback could attack him a bit more. Yeah, like as you said, Flanagan there earlier and Gillane were massive problems inside anytime the ball came in. Yeah, Kieran pointed out, Pat Ryan learned from the first 2 games where he had 2 red cards in the full back line. Minute there was a yellow, he said, we're not getting a third today, and whipped him off. Probably a bit unfair on Owen Downey, and that he could probably feel that he'd have got through the rest of the game without a yellow. But with that Limerick full forward line, it was the right move to make. But Pat Ryan as well, like imagine if they had lost this game, he was probably a goner, and I think he's doing a good job with them. Like he's like a sign of a good man. Are the team improving? The Cork team are improving. I know they had a poor league and everything, but even game to game, they're getting better in the championship. And it seems to be coming, more and more of a settled team as we go through. Got things wrong in game 1, like having to make 6 changes for game 2. But again, he had the balls to do that and tear up the script, and it has worked for them. They've been a different team since that round 1 game.
I think that's the key, Rory, is they had to find their team, and I think they have it now. I think that front 6 is nailed on, and I think even midfield, Ethan Toomey and Darvis Gibbon, they're nailed on. Might be a bit chop change in a full back. Wing backs, but the thing is,
maybe Joyce in midfield, maybe Kieran as well is another option for them.
Wing back midfield, yeah. But I think Cork just have this obsession with centre backs over the years, and they talk Joyce up as the king down there, And as I said, he's a really good player, but I wouldn't lay all my eggs in one basket with one player either. The thing is, right, we're talking about how good Cork were, and each player we couldn't say one negative. Yet we're highlighting, I suppose, not flaws, but I suppose players off form in Limerick, and definitely Diarmaid Byrnes, Tom Marcy are 2. I think Aaron Gillane, to a certain extent, he's not scoring enough from play for me. Again, he had 7 points from frees the weekend, no point from play. Look, I know he is well marshalled. To be fair to Kylie, he, in the last couple of years, he has had no issue in dropping players. Look, Flanagan was dropped for the last game. Comes back in, scores 3-3. He dropped Gillane before. Tom Morrissey, yes, he can be a bit of a slow burner where he'll build form as the year goes on. But while we're talking about all these players off form, but yet Limerick were so close on the day, against that huge Cork performance, that if Limerick can, increase to a couple of, definitely with Burns and Tom Morrissey, just them 2 players alone will be a massive impact in the team performance. I think Darragh Donovan's a huge loss in the middle. Just the link between the backs and forwards. I think definitely Reedy last year struggled. I think Keane Lynch has probably been dragged into more of a battle where I think he's, probably his better creator there in the 11 jersey. We're not seeing the best of him. But I think Darragh Donovan, if we can get him back in the field, I think the word is Mike Casey would possibly be due back for the Waterford game. And it's just so quick how quick it changes where, Limerick sitting on 4 points, look like in full control. But yes, if they lose to Waterford and Cork beat Tipperary, Limerick are out. And it's the roller coaster that the round robin is, but it's great for the viewer. But it can all change really, really quick. And I suppose that game is huge now for Limerick to have to at least get 1 point in that game. But I suppose that the week break after that Titanic battle, will definitely stand to them. Waterford are going to go to war in Cusack Park this week, which would be a real tough game, and to bounce back after a week, obviously would be no easy feat for them. But I just think with Limerick there is players struggling for form, but I just think if they can get the result against Waterford and get out, with the couple of weeks break around Munster finals, if they can secure it, and try and get these players back in form, they're going to be still a hell of a force come the All Ireland series. But I agree with what Rory said earlier. I've never shouted for Tipperary in my life. I might have to start this weekend because the way Cork played last weekend, you wouldn't mind seeing them out.
I never would have thought I've heard you say that, Kieran, to be fair.
I call for a draw. Let's play a hope to draw, yeah.
Very good. Guys, might move on. That was a fantastic game last weekend. Credit to both teams. 60 scores kind of spoke its own volumes. I suppose, Ruairi, get you in terms of the weekend. Davy Fitz returns to Clare to face Clare. Clare had the bye week. Do you feel, this is probably set up for another Titanic tussle, really, isn't it?
Yeah, 2-week break, actually, when we think back to it. So came at the right time for him because the Limerick came up in Ennis, which was emotionally draining and in the heat, and then followed by that roller coaster game against Cork below as well. So 2-week break came at the right time, and I think it's a chance to get some injuries, kind of some lads back from injury. I heard according to the Clare Echo there this week, Tony Kelly and Darragh Lohan are fully available for selection. So I think that's going to be a big boost. Just even parking Tony Kelly, I thought Darragh Lohan was probably one of our more consistent players, especially out of the new guys during the league. Midfield was kind of making a place for himself there. I thought Keane Galvin struggled a small bit there against Cork, to be honest. And we've seen the best of Keane Galvin's being the half back line. He looked a bit out of place midfield and was kind of reacting to what was going on rather than, forcing the game. Whereas I think just Lohan will kind of, himself and Malone will be a formidable enough midfield. 2 working men there, that'll put in a real shift, especially in the continued absence of Ryan Taylor. I think having him back, Lohan will help things. And Tony Kelly, of course, up in Ennis, if he's fully fit and ready to go, he is magic. He can do special things. And Waterford, I suppose, have their man Desi at the other side. So it's going to be an intriguing game, and there's a real knockout feel to it. There is, especially for Waterford, knowing they have to go to the Gaelic grounds against a Limerick team, who'll be smart enough to defeat in Cork. They're going to see, a real opportunity of getting a win up in Ennis. Their record against Clare has been abysmal in the round robin, especially up in Ennis. They've taken 2 big beatings up there in the previous years. So, they'll want to set the record straight. They've more or less a full deck now. I know Prunty there's doubts about. He'll be a huge loss if he's missing, especially with, the form Shane O'Donnell is in. But other than that, Tyke de Burka has had no ill effects. He's slotted straight back in there and has made a huge difference. Caleb Lyons on real good form. They're beginning to take over a bit. Only thing I question, if this was if you're looking at horse racing form to kind of go into another sport, and you looked at they had 2 home games against a Cork team that were well below par and were 14 men for long stages and still could have got out of there with something. And then a Tipperary team where, to be honest, James Owens, he didn't do Tip any favours that day. And I know Waterford were wasteful at the other end, but you kind of question where Waterford are as such. I know they're, as I said, some of their big names are beginning to take over, but overall, I think Clare's maybe a better form line, beating Kilkenny in a league final, playing so well against Limerick for 50 minutes or whatever it was, 55 minutes. The performance down against Cork was probably their best performance in a long time, albeit maybe a bit loose at the back. That was it was definitely the best performance in over 12 months anyway. So I just think I feel Clare are in a better place maybe, and Watford are kind of going there in a bit more hope now. If Watford go up there and win, they're the real deal, because it's a tough place. Watford have found it tough to go there in the past, and it'll put Clare in huge jeopardy. Then they'll have to go down to Thurles looking for a win and looking for favours elsewhere. So that's why it has this real knockout element to it. And again, it's almost like it's become such a big deal over the years, was Lohan and Davy and this kind of thing. The great thing is the Munster Championship is so intriguing, it's hardly even mentioned. It's all about the battles and the players on the pitch. Is the way it should be.
But Lohan really has the one up, isn't he? Is it 5-0 in that regard, Lohan Davy?
Yeah, against Wexford. Davy says with Wexford and with Waterford. You could say Davy is due, and
but actually, a point was enough for Waterford, to finish at minimum third, because they had the head-to-head over Cork.
Yeah. So, and a point with Clare, then you still have to go down and beat Tip and Thurles then to get to 5. So, it's the permutation. I think Shane O'Donnell said it in a good interview during the week. He said he watched Cork and Limerick without thinking of permutations and who should win this and points difference. He said, and he enjoyed it because he said, if the minute you start thinking of that, and as a player, he was saying, the players just have to completely focus on it's a game and win it, and don't be thinking about other games and other scenarios, because it can become a bit mind-boggling. And if you're looking at favours elsewhere and this and that, take your eye off it for 1 second, you're in trouble.
Kieran, how did Waterford beat Clare on Sunday? Their goal threat's been massive in the last 2 home games. There's been good spread of scores here. Desi Hutchinson back in and around the full forward line along with Mikey Kiley. You've Callum Lyons marauding from midfield. You've Jamie Barron back to top form. I suppose there's a question mark on the full back position if Conor Prunty's out, but Tyler Burke back there. There's many threats here that Clare need to negate, but I suppose what do you feel might be the key influence here for Waterford if they do pull up a win in Cusack Park on Sunday?
I think that the biggest battle of the day is going to be Mikey Kiley and Cleary, because we've seen the last few games, especially just how good a ball winner Mikey Kiley is for Waterford. He's very comparable to Duggan for Clare. That's one point I think that Rory, if Prunty wasn't out, I'd nearly put in Duggan in full forward just because of the damage he could do in there.
About Duggan, Kim. There's injury doubts about Duggan. I should have said that there a minute ago. Yeah.
Right.
So hopefully he's fit, but you hear so little, so many rumors these days. But no, I'd agree with that. What you were saying, to throw him in on the edge of the
at least have him in there. I put him in and out there for 10 minutes at a time, and just because if Prunty is out, he's a big full back and a big man. I think it will cause some discomfort for the Waterford backline. But I think for Waterford, look, at while they were a little bit of a surprise package early into this championship, they are on 3 points with home games. I suppose the pressure does ramp up from. I think it's all out work rate. I think Jamie Barnes is instrumental for that. I think Clare, probably one of their weaknesses is defensively. Over the last year or so, where I think if teams ran at them, they've conceded a couple of goals. So I think this probably will be in Waterford's game plan. Like the Barron running from deep. I think Desi Hudson needs to be used more, but and himself and Kiley will play in that inside too. I suppose at the other end of the field is Tyler Burke has been, like, for a guy that's gone through serious injuries, it's really impressive. I can just slap back in. He looks like the Tiger Burke of old. There's some really good battles all over the field. They're probably, strip it all back, they're probably similar-ish in how they set up. You compare like the Lions to Darragh Fitzgerald, and where Lions can rotate anywhere from the wing back to wing forward. To me, it's the work rate. If Waterford bring that work rate, they're going to be a handful. I do think that they will struggle to be Clare, because I think, to be fair to Clare, like Ennis, Cusack Park, they've turned into a fortress over the years. They're really, really hard to turn over there, so it will take a big performance. Look, I'm sure when Davey was planning coming into this year, I'm sure he was banking on having 4 points in the first 2 games, and probably half thinking it wouldn't be enough, so that they will be, as I said, 1 point will do them from the last 2 games. So, there's no illusion if he gets a point in Cusack Park, it'll be a very good result for Waterford. Even for Limerick, if it goes into that last weekend, I think Limerick would even take a point at this stage just to secure passage. But it will be, I think it'll be a fair tussle, but I can still see Clare coming out just with the home advantage. And I think they have been playing really well. And I suppose this is, I suppose, a new pressure on Waterford. I suppose the pressure they've had over the last couple of years was to try and put a performance together. They've done that now. I suppose Clare have eked out these big games in the last couple of years, so I think there'll be a little bit more experience, even at this stage, especially.
Yeah, guys, I'm kind of hearing, Kieran, you're hedging for Clare. Rory, from your perspective, feel that Clare have enough to beat Waterford on Sunday?
Yeah, I do. Look, and there's always a danger when you're up against, as Kieran said, the likes of Mikey Kiley and Desi, that goal threat there. And Clare have conceded goals, and if Waterford stick 3-4 goals in, it's a big mountain to climb. But Clare at the other end of the course, like with Shane O'Donnell in the form he's in, we've been getting goals too. Aidan McCarthy's been finishing chances. He's in good form. For me, like you were asking Kieran about what Waterford need to do. For me, it's kind of the guys, the likes of Neil Montgomery, Jack Prendergast, Darragh Lyons. These guys, I think, need to step it up a bit for them as well. You can't be fully reliant, on Jamie Barnes and Caleb Lyons, and so they kind of need a more overall team performance. I just feel sometimes they're a bit reliant on their stars, whereas other teams have a bit more of an even spread. Look, I'm sure when it comes to 2:00 on Sunday, like that, all that, like, it's just going to be what happens inside the white lines there. And Clare, as Kieran alluded to, like, they have a good record. Like, you could say that they still lost a game already this year. Cusack Park lost one last year against Tipperary, but just the fact, I think as well, the fact Clare could sit down and watch the Waterford Tip game, completely have a look at Waterford, and have another week to prepare. It's a slight advantage the way it's broken for Clare, having the more or less a 3 weeks since they played last, like 21 days since their last game. Gives a chance to get lads back, but also to really look at the opposition, look at areas to target there. And I hope, that the homework has been done properly, and Clare can go and exploit it, because if Conor Prunty isn't playing, that's still a small bit of a makeshift backline for me. Kieran Bennett isn't naturally a corner back. Irla Daly is more of a central player as well. Now they've been going well, but sometimes like you're better off with I find with your out and out cornerback, your Sean Finn, your Adam Hogan, just guys that even going back to Kavanagh of the Kilkenny days, like just players that like that is their expert position and that's where they always play. They're always your best cornerbacks, even Barrett from Tipperary. So for me, like I still have question marks over that Waterford full back line, and if any full forward line will test them, it'll be Clare this week and Limerick the following week. So based on that, I'm just and based on overall form for over the last 2 or 3 years, and even this year, I'm going to give the nod to Clare and say Clare by 5 points.
I tend to agree with you there, lads, but I would say with Waterford, they need to provide a performance of some note going to Cusack Park, heading into the following weekend against Limerick. You'd imagine Davy Fitz might have those Waterford lads somewhere around Clare for the week of that Limerick game, the way things are going. But I'd wonder with Waterford if they can keep this tight for 10, 15 minutes to go, just to test that nerve of the Clare management, particularly on the sideline, just to make the right calls at the right time. I still think Clare should have enough, but I think there's huge onus here for Davy Fitz and the Waterford team to really deliver a performance on Sunday. I suppose, guys, we've touched on Cork, the euphoric highs of last Saturday. They do travel en masse to Semple Stadium on Sunday to face a Tipperary side that are really backs against the wall here, Kieran. I mean, they're your second favourite team now on this podcast episode. But to be fair to Tipperary, if they don't get a result here, there does seem to be an end of an era coming fairly quickly for this Tipperary team. Huge pressure on Liam Cahill and this management and players alike.
Yeah, I suppose they show good spirit in getting the point, I suppose, in Walsh Park 2 weeks ago. I suppose the fear is, will the Cork support outnumber the Tipperary support in Semple Stadium? Was there 10,000 tickets sold directly after the Cork Limerick match in the space of an hour last week? The intense or the Cork they're going to want to bring on that intensity and that work rate they brought to that Limerick game. I'm sure there's tired bodies this week. I'm sure it'll be all about recovery for them. I suppose if you're looking at Tipperary, they have a lot of improvements in certain players. I think, Gerard O'Connor, who had a very good league and Fitzgibbon campaign, I think he struggled a bit in the early game. I think, Jason Ford is struggling a bit for form. I suppose look at the backs and you're looking at matchups, the Tipperary backs versus the Cork forwards. They will have it all to do. I think for me, I think Cork win it. I think Cork at 4-6 is a seriously good bet. Obviously away from home, but Tipperary, while there's still huge question marks. Carl Barrett obviously is a huge plus getting back in that team, but I just think the Cork forwards, and you're looking at the matchups of the Tipperary backs, and I'm struggling to see how they will get a hold of them. And then at the other end, like, you need a front six in form to go and win matches, and when there's question marks over maybe two of your marquee players as such, it's not a good place to be. Pressure is on Tipperary this week. Pressure is on Cork as well. They have to win to try and stay safe. But I think Tipperary lose this, they're out. And you suppose you said the same for Cork, but I just still can't see past Cork. Just after that performance last weekend, we are looking for consistency now. But it's very hard to see any team, if Cork bring that performance that they did last weekend. I don't think there's any team in Munster that could live with it.
Yeah, Rory, get you in there. I suppose get your thoughts on that Semple Stadium showdown between Tip and Cork.
Yeah, for me, I think Kieran talks about matchups. I just look at the Tipperary backline, and one thing the Cork forward line showed against Limerick was absolute pace, especially coming on to breaks. Be it Fitzgibbon coming through from midfield, Barrett coming in off. They Harnedy as well is a good burst over the first few yards, and Brian Hayes, good like these guys, and the pace coming off the bench as well. And you look at Tipperary backline and all good hurlers: Cathal Barrett, Michael Breen, Craig Morgan, Conor Bowe, like Ronan Maher, Brian Amara. Some of them are similar players. Like, they're good under the high ball, lovely strikers of the ball. But I just worry about them lads running at them. And Thurles, as we know, is a huge pitch, and it'll suit this Cork forward line. The only thing is, again, we'll get back to it, that Cork back line. And if any team can engineer goals, it's Tipperary. But they will need Jason Ford on form. He's having a very quiet championship. Gerard O'Connor, as we mentioned, one of the players of the Fitzgibbon. And also, let's not forget, last year had a very strong Munster championship for Tipperary. So you'd imagine he'd be kicking on this year. But it hasn't quite happened for him yet. But if these guys click as well, like, I think Tip would be looking at getting goals here. And I would think that from a Tipperary point of view, Cahill will be looking and saying, okay, let's go goals here, because if it comes to shootout, I don't think that we're going to outshoot Cork in terms of its points scored. And like Cork have put up 28 points the last day against Clare. It was 324 or something they put up against Clare. I think Tipperary will be looking at maybe like getting 4, even 5 goals here. And it might sound mad, but I think that's the way they're going to win this, is really going at that Cork backline. Again, I just think for Tip, there's a bit of a kind of a last hurrah for maybe one guy too, one player too many in terms of age profile, like, Noel McGrath, even John McGrath, Bonner Maher, Ronan Maher himself, and there's even Carl Barrett is a lot of miles on the clock there, and they've kind of soldiered together, this bunch of players, and you just feel it's kind of last stand territory for them. It's the old enemy for them in terms of tradition in Munster was Tip and Cork, and they will not fear Cork one bit. Despite what Cork did last week, they will see themselves beating Cork. And a lot of talks probably about Clare and Waterford, but this Tip Cork game is going to be, potentially a cracking game as well. I would, again, just worry. Again, I know I'm kind of pointing out both backlines as weaknesses, but if Cork can open up that Tip backline with what they did to Limerick last week, it's hard to see Tipperary putting up a score to match them. So I'm going to, tip it to Cork, but just another huge shootout, but maybe Cork coming out the right end of it here.
Is there a worry for Cork, like a hangover from last week? Not getting ahead of themselves, but like all the players that were interviewed after spoke about how much they enjoyed it. Can, I suppose, the mind wander forward a little bit, thinking of maybe bigger days down the road, but obviously in a Titanic battle as well. I said there's going to be sore bodies, like. Tipperary, I suppose, have had the extra week to prepare, and I'm sure Cahill was watching the game last week, and I suppose trying to engineer ways around to I suppose to stop that Cork forward line. But I'm just worried: is there a psychological, a mental thing in Cork that might think we are here now? We have all our answers, and could it be caught on the hop? I suppose is the point I'm trying to make. I just think that, and I'm not anyway begrudging them. Like Cork were by far, they were unbelievable performance last week, but I think that celebration after is embarrassing. They're one of the top 3 traditional counties in the country, and to celebrate winning the match, I think it's laughable, really, to be totally honest.
Yeah, no, for Kieran, that terrace, there must have been 10,000 like teenagers in there, and they all just powered onto the pitch like it was more. But actually, it wasn't just teenagers. The whole lot joined in at that stage. But yeah, look, it was mad. It was mad watching it. It's fair enough, like even the Gaelic grounds, young lads are coming on, they're looking for autographs and stuff. But this was like a team that just won a championship, putting players up on shoulders and the whole lot. Like, it was bizarre. And they're kind of, I can see what you're saying. Liam Cahill, I'm sure, would have been shown, if any video clips of the game, he'd start with that. Basically, like, is it saying Cork are true that they're already thinking they've Tipperary beaten and they're going to be in 4 points? Because that's one way you could look at it. Yeah, look, from the other end, like, Tip can hurt them. Like, you've Mark Keogh, I thought was brilliant against Waterford. Really took the game to him. Jake Morris seems to be coming into a bit of form, and we know he can do anything. Like, he's a real goal threat. That's why I wouldn't rule Tipperary out. Wouldn't rule them out. And to be honest, like, I actually thought like that probably Waterford were the team. I know Tip were the ones that equalised at 1-1 at the end of it, but overall, there were times there where Tipperary had big spells of that game where they, tapped on 5-6 points in a row at a couple of stages in the game after Waterford had got goals. They had responded well and took the lead again, and it just felt like that they were beginning to click a small bit that day. And like Liam Cahill kind of seemed happy enough coming out of there because he knows he has 2 home games to come, and they'll still believe they're well in this. Like, but saying all that, Cork could get caught, but it's hard to see it. I just think Cork will have enough firepower.
Yeah, Kieran, get your tip for Sunday in Thurles. Who are you going for?
Yeah, I just struggle to see how the Tipperary backs can handle the forwards and the form they're in at the minute. Look, it's just little doubts in the back of my mind, but I suppose mentally and what that result last week might do. I'm sure that the sports psychologist was the busiest man in Cork this week. Trying to bring them all back to earth. So yeah, I am going to tip Cork. I think they have been knocking on the door a few years. I think we've said it here in this pod that there's so many players, and I suppose the biggest question was to try and pick the best 15, and I think they're getting close to it. But it's consistency now. Win this. Look, they're not guaranteed safe passage yet. I think if Waterford get a point from either of the last 2 games, I think they're going to trump them with the head-to-head. But I suppose, look, I still think, based on and leaving form out of it, and last weekend out of it, I think Cork are probably in a better place than what Tipperary are. So I'm going to go for Cork.
I might throw devil's advocate. I'll go Tip. And I just think this because if there's no result here, it's an end of an era. And I think certain players within this Tip panel know it's probably, their time is probably now to kind of impress. I think the goal threat inside here for Tipperary is being pretty understated here. I think Patrick Collins in goal, I think, is a bit of a vulnerability for Cork. His distribution out. Sean O'Donoghue, massive problems last weekend. I don't see that being remedied. I think there's about 3 or 4 goals here in this Tipperary side. But I do fear for them a little bit in the middle third if that run game goes Cork. But I'll plumb for Tipperary here. I don't think they may get beat, but I think Cork are going to have a few issues trying to get down from the emotional high of last Saturday. It's very hard to bring 2 epic back-to-back performances together. You see it in any sport here, euphoric high, there's usually a bit of a come down. So, look, I think Cork, mentally be more the challenge than the physical side. I think this is going to be an epic encounter. I suppose, guys, quickly, Leinster last weekend. I did talk to Saoirse and Kieran about my in-laws in Carlow being excited about this Carlow-Kilkenny game. And we kind of acknowledged that it would be a Kilkenny win. But my God, here, Rory, 20 points to 117. I mean, Marty Kavanagh's laid free. You can talk all you want about the controversy regarding that free, but I think Carlow full value for the point here, given how wasteful Kilkenny were for the full 70 minutes.
Yeah, and when I saw that free, Mark, I was kind of going, Jesus, that's the most bizarre looking free. But when they showed it back and the Kilkenny player throwing the ball into the crowd, like, the rule is the rule there. And you could say, like, it hasn't been enforced elsewhere, but, like, that's not this referee's fault that it hasn't been enforced elsewhere. If he saw it and the rule is there. But just having the cojones to point that free as well, because it was a difficult free from the sideline, and like no better man than Marty Kavanagh to come over. Like, he's been a stalwart for Carlow. Kieran mentioned from the very start, from when we were talking about the Walsh Cup, about the Nolans, Chris Nolan, and he tormented Kilkenny. Like, they could not get a handle on him. Yeah. And Paddy Boland as well caught some good ball in the air, who hadn't really, been a factor for him since the win over Offaly last year in the Joe McDonagh, where he was a threat inside again on high ball. As we said, catching the ball with his right hand, left hand on top can be awkward for defenders, just not used to it. And he's very good in the air. When Kilkenny went down a man, just even listening on the radio, I was below Pairc Ui Chaoimh and trying to listen into it as much as I could. And even the commentators were kind of like, they didn't think anything of it. Like, but Carlow obviously smelled blood and went at it. And okay, Kilkenny hit 17 wides, and you can say all that stuff, but that's not Carlow's problem. Like, Carlow had their chance, went for it, and look, it's a great draw. Here we said at the start. I said at the start of this Leinster Championship is going to be 3 groups. You're going to have Kilkenny and Galway. You're going to have Dublin and Wexford there fighting, and then you're going to have Carlow and Antrim at the bottom. But here, look, couldn't have got it so wrong. It's Galway, for one thing, have been the real disappointment there. Carlow have given their big performance and still have Antrim to play. Antrim have had their win over Wexford. Wexford have beaten Galway. Galway are the one team here that seem to be, even Dublin now, who I was kind of slating during the league, are showing real signs of progress as the Leinster Championship is going on, and really put Antrim to the sword. So, yeah, it's become all to play for as well. Just the difference in attendances, though, like when you watch the highlights of the game from Parnell Park and Carlow, like where are the hurling people in these counties? Like, this is the Leinster Championship for them. I'm sure there'll be a lot more Carlow people out the next time they're home, But like, it's just disappointing for the effort the team have put in, and for what a result to get, to have such a poor kind of following down there at it. Like, yeah, look, it's made for an interesting Leinster Championship. It's anything away from what we thought it would be, and it's wide open. And to be honest, Galway are looking vulnerable there to me.
Yeah, Kieran, get you in there. I suppose kudos to Carlow, never gave up. I thought they'd caused Kilkenny all sorts of problems with their shape and cohesion. They went direct, as you've called it, at the start of the season. Carlow's middle third really did impress, and I thought Kilkenny were very incohesive, particularly their shape. I think that really caused an awful lot of their wide count, but I think the goal, particularly from Keogh, really did expose an awful lot of things here for Kilkenny, particularly that defensive pace didn't seem to be there. And I think for Derek Ling, bit of a regroup here, and particularly with the squad depth. I know we had a number of players out, and Jordan Malloy joining the injury list here. It was a real kind of test of the squad depth, and maybe some of these Kilkenny players didn't step to the mark.
Yeah, Carlow, they're playing a basic game plan really as such. they're staying defensively sound. At times, they're even playing 8 inside their backs, but it's all long ball. I said they're unbelievable ball winners. Each player, like man on man, they will go win their own ball. Chris Nolan, Kavanagh, even when they do go short, on a rare occasion they do go short, it's ball out to McDonagh and in long into space in the corner. So they're playing to their strengths. I've said that in the weeks gone by. They're playing to their strengths, and it just Kilkenny didn't deal with it. I think was there a certain factor of maybe they underestimated the challenge? But I think, to be fair to Carlo, okay, while they're only sitting on 1 point, they have had really, really good performance on the game they played. Dublin struggled. Probably a goal that shouldn't have been allowed was the biggest difference in that game. And even Galway, it was late in the game. Conor Whelan had to come on before they put any daylight between themselves and Carlo. So they have been putting some big performances up. Obviously their home games are really targeting them, and I'm sure no different than this weekend. Wexford coming up to Carlo, that they're going to, this is one of the games they believe, I'm sure, that they can win this game. It just shows how good the coach Tom Lally is. Really good record over the years. He knows Carlo hurling, like he had a stint with Mount Leinster Rangers, like he knows them in and out. They're playing to their strengths, they said. And while I generally would consider Carlo probably a football county more than hurling over the years, like I think that tide is really changing. They're really showing how good a team they are, and like that result will buy them. Like I'm sure you'll see bigger crowds this weekend. Wexford coming to town, local derby. Kilkenny probably, even with the man sent off, like they were in control, like they were 5-6 points up at half time. Kilkenny went 2 up and late in injury time, and well, I suppose another Carlo team might have said, right, look, a moral victory, we got close. They kept the fight going, to see 2 late points to get the draw, and I suppose real spirited performance. And I even think like Pairc and Antrim, which I would have said Antrim would probably win that last game against Carlo. Like that's not by any means a foregone conclusion, because I think this Carlo team will go to Pairc Park with a real belief that they can beat Antrim up there and secure Liam McCarthy hurling for next year.
I suppose we talked about Chris Nolan, Carlo being superb from play, 4 points. I suppose Kilkenny have found an absolute gem in Owen Wall as well in this Leinster Hurling Championship. I mean, he scored 1-3 again last weekend, and I suppose for Derek Ling, it's probably the positive coming from that fixture. And I suppose Kilkenny, I mean, they have to go up to Dublin this weekend, and I mean, that's going to be a big, big game after Dublin beating Antrim by 20 points last weekend.
I jump in there, Mark. Yeah, no, I think Dublin were really impressive. There wasn't much in it. I suppose early in the first half. There was only 4 points in it. There was only 4 points in it in the 40-minute mark. But it was the second half where Dublin did the real score, and they outscored Antrim 2-18-9 the second half. Really kicking on. Donald Burke, I suppose, getting into after a long layoff, scoring 3 points in place. Game by game, he's building and he's improving in play. Sean Curry with 4 points, and I think for me, man of the match was Conor Burke with 5 points. He's a real torment in midfield and a real worker. And as Rory said a few minutes ago, there, Dublin are, I suppose, building, and they've secured 5 points out of 6. Okay, they have their 2. I suppose their toughest games are going to come in Kilkenny, and they're home to Kilkenny and away to Galway. A win in either of them 2 games will secure an Leinster final for them. So I'm sure there's no Micheál Dunne, who's not finding it hard to motivate these lads at the minute. They got, I suppose, the draw on Wexford, and they've won the last 2 games. So one win will see them through the Leinster final, and I don't think they're going to fear either team, because I think in Parnell especially, I suppose we compare it to Clare and Cusack and I suppose Antrim and Pairc Park. It's a hard place to go and get a win. And I'm sure a lot of that team are going to be playing on confidence, especially after the score they put up last week. I do expect a backlash from Kilkenny on that Carlo performance, but I still think Dublin will go for blood. I think even a point from the 2 games will be a result for them. But I'm sure they'll be playing for the win and a place in the Leinster final.
Yeah, Rory, get you in there. I suppose get your thoughts in terms of Dublin last weekend.
Yeah, Dublin very impressive last weekend. Antrim are coming down on a high. They're being tipped by a lot of people as well. And like from the very start, Dublin controlled this game from, race into a 7-8 point lead. One stage in the second half, Antrim did pull it back to about 5 points. Had they got a goal at that stage, but to be honest, like Dublin, like Owen O'Donnell, superb, all up the middle, Chris Crummy, they really have a good spine to the team now, and becoming a lot more settled. I just question their depth. Should they pick up an injury too? Because as we saw last year and even throughout the league when they were down a couple of players, they seem to lack strength and depth, and it's possibly something we're learning a bit about Kilkenny as well, because without the likes of Paddy Deegan, Mikey Carey, Mullen and Cody there against Carlow, not many apart from Owen Wall with his 1-3 stepped up there. Billy Ryan again, we nicknamed him One Score Billy, just chipped in with a point, taken off at half time. Billy Drennan came on, he's on at 58 minutes, never scored. Strength and depth is even an issue for Kilkenny. So Dublin, I think that could be their issue, but at the minute they are in a very good position to go down and give Kilkenny a mighty game. Kilkenny have to be reeling a bit. Some tough conversations have been had there, and players are under big pressure. You're kind of wondering here, will is this the perfect time for Dublin to go there, or is it the fact they're going to face a backlash? But I'd sooner, from Donoghue's point of view, he'd sooner be saying, look, we're the ones in a good spot here, have a bit of confidence in where we are right now, and let's go down and deliver a big performance. I don't ever remember Dublin. I know Dublin have had wins over Kilkenny, especially kind of back the Anthony Daly era. They beat them in a league final and beat them in a semi-final. Coming up to Parnell Park, yeah, they have beaten them there in the past, and they'll really fancy their chances.
I was actually talking to a Dublin hurling guy during the week, and they smell blood. I suppose the club he's involved with, he's talking that they're a lot of people are talking about going to this match, and I think it's they're probably on a little bit of a high at the minute, and that if they pack out Parnell and give them that, I suppose, that 16 man, and I do think there will be a backlash for Kilkenny, because it's rare you see Kilkenny put in 2 bad performances in a row.
I think they need some of those guys back as well, though. It's grand saying a backlash, but you need the likes of Owen Cody and them to deliver the backlash too,
Cody won't be back though. I think as far as Cody's out.
Because they look a bit fragile at the minute, especially up front.
I'd agree with you there. I think Dublin do sense blood here, to be perfectly fair. And I think there's a bit of feel-good factor in Dublin hurling. I know a few guys in Dublin from work and the under-20s last night with the magnificent win over Galway. That's going to absolutely propel more fans coming through the gates there in Parnell Park. But I suppose Kilkenny have had good experiences in Parnell. I think this is probably set up to be a massive game here on Saturday night. I suppose, guys, get a quick tip from me, Dublin Kilkenny on Saturday. Kieran first.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm going to go Kilkenny. I think, look, Dublin, obviously, we've named all the I suppose they are improving. I would have seen a lot of them over the last couple of weeks, and they have some big players. I think Ruairi's right. They probably lack a little bit of depth, and while they're starting the same 15, and if they can stay starting the same 15, they will be the hard team to beat, especially at home. But I just think Kilkenny, players aside, I know they are struggling for scores up front without the likes of Mullen and Cody, but I just think they're going to bring a different work rate this weekend. And as I said, it's rare we see them outperformed, and they are under pressure. They sit on 4 points. They lose this game, and they're serious pressure to even qualify with Leinster. So with Wexford coming next week to Nolan Park, so I think Kilkenny will want to get a win here and get on 6 points and at least secure safety to the All-Ireland series. So I'm just going to tip to Kilkenny. And the other game then, Antrim Galway. It's really hard to know what Antrim. I suppose we saw it a couple of weeks ago where they went to Nolan Park. I do suspect there was a certain element of let's go down, do what we have to do, play the game, and get back home and play Wexford. And I'm wondering, with the frailties of Galway have shown in the last couple of games, is it a case where our Antrim planning some sort of an ambush again? It's very hard to see Galway losing here. I do think Antrim will definitely put in a better performance than they did last weekend. The 2 home games coming now with Galway and Carlow, but I still think Galway will have enough. Look, I said Galway are under pressure too. Galway on 3 points. They need results. They need wins, and I think they probably will get one this weekend as well.
Yeah, Rory, get you in there. Tip for Parnell Park and Corrigan Park this weekend.
Yeah, I'd go along with Kilkenny because look, over the last 5-6 years, they've always done well against Dublin when they've come across them. I know it's up in Parnell Park, and Dublin are on a high coming into this. Look, Kilkenny, it is the fact that it is Dublin on the horizon, and the fact this game means so much to Kilkenny. That's usually when you get Kilkenny at their best. When there's talk of them, potentially not being a Leinster final if they lose and so on, and I think this is when usually Kilkenny come out fighting. And this could be a actual absolutely cracking game now. Saturday evening match, 6 o'clock. This could be a cracking game because Dublin will believe that this is their time to beat Kilkenny and get themselves into a Leinster final. They won't fancy having to go up to Salthill to get a result in their last round. They'll see this one, a home game against a vulnerable Kilkenny, as the one for them. But as we mentioned, Kilkenny, traditionally when they're at this stage of a championship, when it's do or die, they do produce. And I just feel that there is a performance in them. And from Galway then, I go along with Kieran. I think the fact that Antrim have had their win at home over Wexford, Galway are absolutely forewarned there. Antrim have put up big performances before without taking the scalp. Now that they have a scalp, and Galway have to get the act together. They were abysmal against Wexford, completely out-hurled in every line of the pitch, and just seemed like devoid of, what they were at, really. So they need to, this has to be kind of a marker from here on for them. If they're to do anything in this championship, it needs to start up in Pairc Park. And I will give them a tip here, but I just don't see them going anywhere really long-term in the championship, Galway. But I fancy them to beat Antrim here. So yeah, Galway, Kilkenny. But yeah, I wouldn't be 100% in either of them, to be honest. And that's a rare thing to say, because pre-championship, you'd have just ticked these as 2 wins for Galway, Kilkenny. But now the way things are going, it's a lot more interesting. But yeah, I'm still tipping Galway, Kilkenny despite all that, but with less confidence than I would have a few weeks ago.
Absolutely. We'll throw Carlow and Wexford to the mix as well, Kieran. I mean, I think you're heading down there anyway to see it, Southeast Derby. Do you feel that Wexford have learned their lessons from Corrigan Park, that they're not going to get ambushed in Cullen Park?
You'd hope so, Mark. You'd hope that Galway game has probably done some wrongs, outdone some wrongs in the last few weeks up to that. There was a lot of hurt that week after the loss in Corrigan Park. They did put in a huge performance. Okay, Galway were poor, but I think to counteract that, Wexford were really, really good. Put up a big score. I suppose the injury front, the news is very good. There's no injuries to report. I think even maybe Dee O'Keefe might even be coming close to return. So I suppose, I think last week's result will be a shot in the arm where they get the warning for Carlow. I don't think they'll ever underestimate them. They would have played in the Walsh Cup, and I suppose it's seen their strengths. Going into a stadium and playing away, it is that bit harder, but I suppose I feel that they will be prepared and, I suppose treated like a Leinster quarter-final as such. They have to win 2 games to secure a Leinster final. I suppose this is step 1 of the 2. I suppose just, throw the shackles off and go out and play. And, I suppose, as I said earlier, Carlow are a little bit of a one-trick pony in the way they play. It's probably old-fashioned in ways, but they make it work and they're really good at it. So there is ways around it. But yeah, I think for me, Wexford probably are in a good place after that Galway win. And I suppose there has been, inconsistencies over the last couple of years when Wexford hurling, where they win the big games and struggle in the games they should be winning. So let's hope to kind of get over that. But I think Wexford will win, probably with a couple of points to spare.
Yeah, Rory, would you concur with that?
Yeah, I would. I just think Wexford, they're a better team than Carlow. And I know you could say, Kilkenny were as well, and they came up a crapper, but Wexford now have to. There is this question mark over Wexford, and Kieran said it there, that they don't perform in games. Like, I don't know, is there a presumption they're going to win these games against weaker teams that have kind of not always been in the top grade? Because like last year, lost to Westmeath and then went out and beat Kilkenny. This year, lost to Antrim and then destroy Galway. The team themselves need to take a responsibility here and treat every game, as a knockout championship game as such. And whatever team they're facing, they need to give their best performance. And they haven't been doing that up until now. And I just feel like, I think you're hoping from a Wexford point of view that Antrim game is a turning point, and it doesn't. I know it was said last year with Westmeath, but that now that the performance they gave against Galway is like their minimum for the year in terms of they don't drop below that from now on. If that happens, they're a serious force in Leinster, and I just see them beating Carlow here. I'm going to go even maybe to 6.7 points. I just think that they're they're going to struggle. The top teams have struggled to mark Leach in this year, and now you've Rory Connor on form as well. They're just beginning to tick and they have to follow up that performance against Galway. If they go down here with a limp performance against Carlow, it'll ask more questions about the team, and they're kind of up and down nature. So hopefully, from Wexford point of view, they show their consistency here and beat Carlow by 6-7 points, which I think Wexford are better than Carlow by that margin. So that's the way they should be treating the game, and that's the way it should pan out.
Yeah, I'd agree with you there, Rory. I think definitely with Carlow, with the performance against Kilkenny, the genie's out really, essentially, in regards to Carlo. Be disappointed for Wexford if they can't produce a performance. I think Conor McDonagh might have a big game in the inside forward line as well, so I'll give the tip to Carlo. I think Kilkenny may have too much for Dublin here. I think Park's always a good hunting ground for Kilkenny, particularly when they stand into Dublin physicality-wise. I'm just wondering in terms of the Donald Burke factor here. He scored 111 again last weekend. If he's nullified, who comes up with the goods here? And I think, I'm struggling for answers here for Dublin until someone else like O'Sullivan or Crummy really come and produce the goods here against a top team like Kilkenny. You have to go with Kilkenny. And I think Galway, there hasn't been a peep here in Galway regarding this hurling team since the Connacht football final. I don't know if that's a good omen or not here, guys. I think they'll have too much for Antrim, really. But the hope for Antrim here is that they can rebound after a 20-point loss again on the road. I don't know how morale-wise you can kind of keep going after a bad away result to get a home result performance like they did against Wexford. They're going to have to do the same again. But I think Galway probably by 8 to 10. Guys, quickly, Joe McDonagh, round 4. They had the bye week last weekend. Laois 3 from 3. We have Offaly, Kerry down vying for those second, third spots. Meath and Westmeath kind of in a do or die relegation battle this weekend. I suppose, guys, what's standing out for you this weekend? I suppose, Rory, we'll kick off with you first.
It's the Offaly Kerry game stands out because I know Down have been very impressive, but you just Laois are the informed team, so you would be, you'd be pretty confident Laois at home there. Moore Park are going to do the business. Westmeath, they needed to beat Down to have any hope of kind of remaining in the championship after, their opening round defeat there, and like the fact that they, didn't get the win there, they're essentially out of it, and it is a relegation. You just have to think like Westmeath were Division 1 National Hurling League, very competitive in it. They have to win that game at home to Meath. I know it's a local derby and everything in it, but that's a massive one for Westmeath in terms of like they lose that game and there's huge question marks over what's gone wrong there. But yeah, so I'll go along with Westmeath. And then look, the tied round is Offaly and Kerry. Kerry kind of shocked the whole championship in the first round when they went up and won away up in Westmeath and won well up there. So they're not going to worry being on the road. Offaly, as we know, kind of on a high with their under-20s, a great victory again over Kilkenny this week. And the amazing stat was the first Offaly win over Kilkenny since 2007 at minor, under-21 or senior level. So, Offaly are on a high. You just wonder those, like there's a pool of those players, the likes of Adam Screeney that who are going between both teams. Most counties, might have one or two guys going from under-20 to senior. You just wonder, is it kind of going midweek weekend, I suppose talking about emotionally the high of that win during the week as well, trying to refocus for Kerry, who are a dangerous team with an effect. But just the home advantage here, I'm just going to tip my hat to Offaly, home advantage. But again, it's going to be tied around, and you'd have no surprise if Kerry go up and get the victory up there either. They're an established team. Joe McDonagh have been in a good few finals and have had their wins over Offaly over the last few years. So yeah, but at the same time, like Offaly are on a high, even in the under-20s, might feed off to the seniors, and you just give them a nod there.
Yeah, Kieran, get you in there, I suppose. Who are you tipping this Saturday?
That Offaly Kerry game is essentially an All-Ireland semi-final because I think, Laois have all but are in that final. I think Laois will have the one over Down. I think Laois are probably in the, I think they will treat him with the highest respect, but, secure a win this weekend and they can start, planning for that final already. Westmeath, I agree with Roy. I think Westmeath, while they have been, poor, I think Meath are probably fighting a little bit above where they should be. I suppose they had a very good year last year, but I think Westmeath, you compare like Division 2 team against Liam McCarthy team, last year, what went Westmeath and, draw with Wexford and beat them last year or the year before and beat them last year. I think there are two different spectrums, and I'd expect Westmeath to win that. While they are struggling, I expect them to win it fairly comfortably at home as well. And then the Offaly Kerry, like this game can go either way. I do agree, this, chop changing between the 20s and the senior, that game was only played Wednesday night. And well, I think the Offaly Kerry's on Sunday though, but the other game's on the Saturday, so they will have that extra day. I suppose at home you'd have to give Offaly the nod. Kerry, while they had an atrocious, league campaign, haven't been half bad in the Joe McDonagh. Without their talisman, Shane Conway, I suppose performances they put in weren't in any way expected. So, I suppose in their regards, it's a shot to nothing really, because I think, the pressure will be on Offaly. I think Offaly will probably regard themselves, at this stage, more than a Joe McDonagh team, I think Offaly probably have notions of being at the top table. They'd be really disappointed they didn't get there last year. So just on that, I think with the hunger and I suppose with the young talent they have, I'll give it to Offaly. But, Kerry will come here, they've nothing to lose.
Yeah, I'd agree with you there, guys. I think it'd be a massive shock if Westmeath don't win and win well against Meath. I mean, Meath have defensively struggled all ends up in this Joe McDonagh. And I know Westmeath have had struggles with their attacking form, but I don't see that happening on Saturday. Laois Down, I suppose if Down can get McRichard and Sands involved with a few goals, I think Laois have been very good this year, though. I do see a big win there. I think the Offaly-Kerry game is the one. And look, if O'Connor and Goggin particularly can provide some scoring platform for Kerry, they might have a chance. But I think there's an awful lot. As like the Dublin hurling scene at the moment, there's a field goal factor in this Offaly hurling setup now, particularly with the under-20s. That win against Kilkenny is massive psychological effect. And I think that might radiate here at the weekend. I think Leo is doing a good job here, Leo O'Connor. And to be perfectly fair, I think like Dignan and Owen Cahill, I think they should have a bit too much for Kerry there, really. So I think we're going for 3 home wins there, guys, I think, to be fair to say. Okay, I think we'll leave it there, guys. It's been a lengthy one tonight. Thanks, Ruairi, and thanks, Kieran, for joining me tonight. I suppose next week we'll review the round 4 action of Munster, Leinster, and Joe McDonagh Cup, and we'll look at a fascinating round 5 next weekend. I suppose until then, guys, have a great weekend, and we'll chat next week.
Thanks, Mark.
Take care, Mark.
Thank you for listening to this podcast episode. If you liked what you heard in this podcast, why not subscribe to the Hawkeye Sidekick podcast on either Amazon, Spotify, YouTube, or Twitter platforms. You can also follow me at Hawkeye Sidekick on Facebook and Twitter for the latest sporting opinions, articles, and reports.